This afternoon's webinar. I'm John Hirschtick. I'm a co-founder and CEO here at Onshape. I'm delighted to welcome today Dave Evans, the founder and CEO of Fictiv.
Thanks, John.
Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Our topic today is optimizing for speed and control in hardware design and manufacturing. And we're really excited to have Dave here. Fictiv is a wonderful Onshape partner who is serving our customers and customers of all CAD systems and really reinventing how manufacturing is happening in the modern era. And what we've discovered is that Fictiv and Onshape, we have a lot of similar views, even though we don't do the same thing. We share a lot of similar views. And Fictiv has recently published a fascinating survey on the state of hardware that's going to be a real focus today. And I'm really excited seeing the results of the survey, really interesting things to reflect on for both of our businesses, I think, and for our customers.
I think it's fabulous to be here. You know, we're a virtual contract manufacturer, so we help people design and build parts every day. Not so much on the design side, that's what we leave Onshape to, but it's about how do you take that digital asset and make it physical. And if you can shorten these development cycles of going from digital to physical, we think that you're going to get more physical products out to market. And so I think our companies really speak the same language, just in different phases of that design cycle. So we're joined here today to talk about our 2018 State of Hardware. This is the third annual survey that we've done for the state of hardware. And this year we had over 1,100 responses, which is just fabulous. All across the globe, actually, we had about 1,000 developers and over 100 manufacturers respond to this. So we'll be rolling out another one next year, and we love when people participate because it gives us just a great slice into what's the world of a manufacturer or a product developer look like today. And so this team for this report was really focused on communication. And so when John and I were chatting kind of offline, that he's like, this is what we're solving every single day, and just felt like there was a great collaboration here because I think that design and DFM is really at the heart of Onshape's DNA as well. So we'll spend today just kind of flipping through some of the findings of it, and then at the end we'll open up for questions. So use the question box in GoToMeeting and ask any questions that you have. We'll leave about 30 minutes at the end to go through Q&A. So maybe on to the first finding here. So the first key finding that we have is the knowledge gap. And this is just fascinating to me that it's almost a third, so 29% of manufacturers report that they receive files that aren't even manufacturable. And maybe even more surprising is the difference between the two, that developers think of themselves as highly knowledgeable how to make things, and manufacturers clearly state that, that they're not, if you will. And so maybe you guys see a little bit of this of how do you blend manufacturing and design together to marry the two?
Well, I think it's about, again, about communication. We'll be talking about this throughout the webinar, is when you have the old tools really are limited to a real serial process. And you have to finish your work on your design and kind of throw, we all heard throw it over the wall in manufacturing. There aren't a lot of great options for a manufacturing partner expert to really be at your side through your process, or to get a quick consult. You have to really interrupt what you're doing to do it. And so we like to think with modern tools, like certainly what we've built in Onshape, where teams can work in real time and always be looking together. And it's not just with CAD tools and not just with Fictiv, with manufacturing. You're allowing people to collaborate in ways they couldn't do before, rather than just sending an email at the end of the process or something. It's also what we're seeing in tools like Google Docs and Slack, where people are able to communicate in more rapidly. It really is about communication.
Because what we've noticed is that it is that communication gap, that knowledge is really hard, that you have a machinist that spent 30 years of this craft of saying, how is this cutter going to take one chip right off that corner? And if you're a trained mechanical engineer, your craft isn't the friction on the chip as it comes around. It's saying, how am I going to integrate this beautiful product to have, no gaps between two mating surfaces? What's the tolerance going to be as I'm putting my PCBA in and covering it with this injection molding enclosure? And so in order to close this gap, we think communication is key. And I think the survey really hit home with that, with the respondents.
You know, as you say that, I'm thinking one of the things both our tools do, both Fictiv and Onshape, is we give you a communications bandwidth that it's like the designer and the manufacturer in the same room. Like if you designed and you were working next to the machinist, you would have great communication. But in today's world, that doesn't happen very often, especially if you want to be cost effective and people are spread out all over the world more than ever. But we can take teams that are spread out all over the world in space, time, organization, and make the communication feel like they're sitting next to each other. Something we both do. I think that's the essence of it.
We love it. And I think that probably goes to our next key finding, which is really around this idea of the design process, and that complex design intent is incredibly difficult. And so in our survey, we had nearly 1 in 5 hardware developers. So that's almost 20% report spending more than 5 hours just creating that release package.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. So like I've done all the hard work. I'm going to have these things made together like this. And I'm going to spend 5 hours just trying to describe to my supplier how to get that done. And we can't make products if this is the state of the union.
Yeah, I'm guessing that 5 hours may just be assembling it, not to mention controlling it and saying, have I really carefully documented what I said to whom? Because when I get back the response, I have to be very careful. Of course, and this is something we hear with customers all the time. So a lot of time, and people don't have that time anymore. They're trying to squeeze it out of the cycle.
And what we find is that even if you don't want to spend the 5 hours, if you try and cut off there, you're actually going to lead to more and more defects at the end of the line. You're going to end up with these issues that, you forgot to talk about this B2 surface finish right on the top, and then you get it back and it's more glossy than what you wanted, or it's maybe more matte, and that you just waited maybe 3 weeks if you're using a traditional supplier for this. And so that complex design intent is one of the key findings of this report.
And also it's about data that isn't just a CAD model of a part or a drawing. It could be other things. It could be PDF files. It could be photographs. You say, hey, this part is going to go in this environment. Here's the old one and some problems we had. And I think both our tools encourage sharing and collaboration on heterogeneous data types, which you don't get when you're just emailing the drawing and the part file quite as easily.
And I think you really hit it home for our next slide here, which is around the miscommunication, that this design intent isn't just 3D CAD, it's not just the 2D drawing, there's all these supporting assets with it as well. And so it's that both groups actually experience this design intent. That I'm over here, I'm a mechanical engineer, I'm working at Ford and I'm trying to build this dashboard, and I'm frustrated that my supplier didn't make my parts right. But equally, that supplier is sitting on the other side being like, what is this mechanical engineer doing? It's just, it's incredible, and that both sides almost at the same 66 versus 74% really see this communication as being one of those key bottlenecks for reducing.
And the thing is, you have this what happens with old tools, with the older tools in both our domains, is you're waiting. Someone has to take time to communicate. Like if I send you, if I'm the designer, I'm representing the designer part of the world here, and you're the manufacturing side. I say to you, hey, make this part. If I want to get any status message from you, you've got to take time out of your work and say, we send some message. With tools like with Onshape, especially their new Enterprise Edition, you can really track.
Reporting on
you get all this reporting. Even with all our editions, whether you use Onshape Standard Pro or Enterprise, they all let you see if someone's doing work or if someone's added a photo. You see that in real time. If I have a problem or I need to make a change in geometry, what the other party is able to see in real time what's happening.
Snap a finger and it's live.
Without any overhead of sending, saying, hey, I need to take time to call you. I mean, when I'll say we were younger, so when I was younger, you consider it like, if you had something that was urgent, you called someone. Today when it's you use texting, slacking and texting and instant, you expect things to happen instantly. And so
I think it's so true. I would love to know from the audience too, as you're listening, does this resonate with you? And make sure to put your questions in, because we'd love to just say, hey, we had over 11,000 people or 1,100 people tell us that these are problems they have, and we want to make sure we're really hitting on on your questions here as well.
The other thing to get to know is you get to know if your vendor or supplier with Onshape, if you ask someone to do something, you can see if they're actually doing it.
Yeah.
You know, which can be very comforting sometimes.
I think that transparency is key.
Yeah.
So our next one actually really speaks to this transparency, and it's this idea that it runs on email. That manufacturing is run on these broad horizontal tools, and you know, this I know is core to your passion, John. Maybe tell us a little bit more if you see this world as well.
Yeah, email is where it's at. People are emailing files around, and again, with CAD, it can be one or two files for a part, but for a whole product, it's hundreds, thousands of files.
Yeah.
And you know, email was a great tool in the past,
yeah.
but today, it's really not a great way to collaborate in highly changing environments. You know, we've all seen the problems. You know, the problems. Everyone out there has been involved in email exchanges of the files. You know, it's like, you know, part John Tuesday, and you know, part Dave Tuesday night, John really Tuesday night.
Don't worry about my final.
Really final this time. Dot part. You know.
When version control happens in the file name
rather
than in these systems, and I think that, you know, what's so interesting is that a mechanical engineer has to live in this world where I use email as my main tool at work, but then I go home and I'm on Facebook, I'm on, you know, on FaceTime with my partner, I'm having all this collaboration, and we know that teams work better when they work together, but so many of the tools that manufacturing runs on are single player mode, they're not multiplayer.
Yeah, and it just and so we call that situation design gridlock, you know, that people end up in with email and tools. And much like the traffic gridlock you see here, you know, this to me is a pictorial view of how a lot of design and manufacturing processes are. Much like the traffic gridlock, you eventually get where you need to go. I mean, products get built. Products got built on pencil and paper. Products got built when the only way to communicate drawings was to roll them in a tube,
draft them up, and
forget about overnight mail. You know, I lived before FedEx, and you know, you wait.
Was it still horses then, John?
Yeah, no, I didn't live in that era, but I've been around a while. You know, and so products were getting built. I mean, the pyramids got built, and they didn't have any of this, right? And so things are getting built, but you know, probably your processes, the processes we see with old tools that you see, are much like this traffic. It's a lot slower than it needs to be. It can be very frustrating, and honestly, occasionally there's a bad accident. When someone cuts the wrong, you know, cutting metal that's from the wrong version is very expensive, not just for the part, but for the time and hassle or the product function or whatever. And so this gridlock is really the problem that I think it's our way of visualizing what we're trying to solve, and we think we can do better. We think we can make it, you know, super highway. The gridlock symptoms that you'd see unfold, they start with.
It starts with a lot of opportunities, is what it does, right? It's that if I have this gridlock of all these cars running into each other, well, how do I change that to modern day CAD systems? And I think that this slide really shows how Onshape thinks about it.
Well, this is the old way, right? This way here, I first want to take you through in detail what we're seeing there, how that gridlock manifests itself. The first is, this is the old world, this slide here. It's everyone needs a copy of the CAD system, and as soon as you have copies of the CAD system, you need to install, upgrade, service packs, license codes and servers. This is the world that we see out there in Gridlockville. And then the data is in files, and the files, as we said, get copied everywhere. FTP, email.
Well, that's thumb drive, you know.
Yeah, and people have tried, you know, what about file servers in PDM? We haven't talked about that. You know, PDM servers sound like a great idea, but they're typically limited within an organization. You know, they're typically driven by checkout and locking workflows. You know, and so in addition, another gridlock symptom is worrying. Am I going to overwrite your changes, or you're going to overwrite mine? It's bad enough to find the latest version, but what if the latest version isn't the one you sent me? You're editing, I'm editing at the same time. These copies get all over the place. And in the old days, you know, we tried to copy software and files to and from cloud servers. Some people are doing that today. And you say, well, don't I fix this by putting my files in a Dropbox folder? Well, that's not a bad idea, but copying files and software to and from cloud servers, they don't really fix the problem. They just kind of move it.
We think a lot about the ideas. If you look at how software is developed today, and you look at the collaborative nature of a GitHub and how you're able to have private repositories with branches and merge control, and that you have these same type of release mechanisms. You use things called Fabricator, all these things to be able to track how software is made. That's really what's missing in the physical world. That even for us, when we see this, when I look at the gridlocks, all I see is opportunities for me. Because I break down the problem, right? When someone says, hey, we wait 4 weeks to get this part made, well, that's great for me. That means that there is 4 weeks minus the 20 minutes that it takes to cut the part to solve these problems.
That's right. And by the way, this diagram of the way people work now, this looks complicated, but I think this is a simplification. I don't think there's any real world process.
I think it's probably actually worse.
This simple, it's really worse. And PDM systems, we tried with PDM systems to do something good. The idea of controlling data is good. It's just the PDM system, in my opinion, doesn't work at doing that because it's these locking. And so in a sense, another thing we're doing with our systems is giving you the benefits that users sought to have with PDM, but didn't really achieve because of the nature of files and check-in and check-out. We can really give them those benefits with a completely different approach. Does that make sense?
I couldn't agree more. And so I think that the way that we really phrase it at Fictiv is that hardware development needs its tech moment. That if you look at how technology has been applied to transportation with Uber and Lyft, I'm here out in Boston staying in an Airbnb rather than a hotel. When you look at how we book airline travel, it's all powered by technology. But if you look at the landscape of manufacturing, sure, we've added this ePDM, and so we've taken PDM and put it to the cloud, all these different things, but I think we still truly lack the tools that our counterparts in software has today. And so we think a lot about how do you take broad horizontal business tools like a Microsoft PowerPoint, an email, a spreadsheet, and how do you build better vertical tools? How do you have collaborative CAD? How do you build manufacturing software that allows you to build instantly as if you had an instance of a 3D printer on your desktop? That if I want a part made, I order it today and it's on my desk tomorrow. That should be the standard. That should be how we develop physical products. And it's really the vision that we're driving towards. Are we there yet? Probably not, right? No, we're chipping away at it every single day.
Yeah.
So in the next slide here, it's a lot about the change that we see. And this is a funny slide, and maybe I'll tell a bit of a backstory on this slide about how design has changed. That John shared this slide with me, and I actually shared him a version of myself from Fictiv, and they were literally one-to-one. He talks about traditional design, and I say traditional manufacturing. And he says agile design, I say agile manufacturing. And because for us, it's about how do you take centralized silo manufacturing that's done all in one factory. It's very linear and it's sequential, that I move it from this process of this to this. And how do you move that to truly agile, where it's global, it's collaborative? We think about manufacturing being done in parallel, so that if I have a 20-part bomb, all the parts are being made in parallel, bundled together, anodized, and delivered. And I know that this speaks volume in the design world for you.
Yeah, absolutely. This is what we see in customers. The design has changed, and the way people work, and it's really interesting to see how the work processes have changed with designers, and they're doing it because they have to compete. I think is what we're seeing in our customers.
I think it forces the change. That they're used to these collaborative tools, and they don't want to be stuck 20 years ago.
The other thing that's interesting about these changes in how companies work is I see them happening in the largest companies and the smallest companies. If you read about Airbus or Boeing and how they're building aircraft, some of the most complex products in the world, they're doing it in more of an agile direction, and it's certainly more fragmented and globalized than it used to be. And it's also true on Kickstarter. If you see a two-person company on Kickstarter, chances are they're in two different locations in highly iterative process.
Yep.
And so we're seeing it across the board in these kinds of process changes in design.
I couldn't agree more. So let's talk a little bit about the opportunities, because the point of this webinar was to expose a lot of what the 2018 State of Hardware showed is these challenges with communication. And so, these three things I think is what Fictiv and Onshape at its core are working on in our core domains. And so for us from a manufacturing side, we think about how do you build that single source of truth from design through to production. That for us, we want to say, hey, when you sent this file and it was actually produced and you get the part back, that file to what was produced is 1-to-1. It's not, was it Dave, John, final, 12 p.m. at night. And I know that for you that this is really, the version control you built in is core to the fundamentals.
Yep, it absolutely is. And we have more work to do on these. We'd love to have even more and more integration, better tools, but the idea of that single source of truth is a very good one under full management of data, integrating tools, and we have more ideas on how we can integrate better, and more to come. But absolutely, this is what we believe will be best.
So sorry, I clicked too early there. Communications, that second one for us is that it's really about taking ideas from static in email and transcending it to be collaborative. And that this was a big finding that was exposed out of our 2018 State of Hardware, and speaks to both of our hearts, that we don't think that manufacturing should be a single player game. It shouldn't just be the design engineer releasing it, chucking it over the fence, and then the manufacturer having to deal with it. And I think that what you are working on at Onshape is we're just starting to scratch the surface on it. And a lot of this has to do with DFM as well in these design cycles.
And so the approach of modern platforms for design or manufacturing, what we've done is to put everything in one place in the cloud. So your data management, collaboration, the tools you need, you put them in one place in the cloud. You don't copy them anywhere. There's a central database. In a sense, this is what business systems look like. Like if you have an accounting system, or if you use Salesforce, or use NetSuite, or Workday, or Zendesk, this is the way they're architected, and this is what we kind of bring to design and manufacturing. This is kind of from a very simplistic view of an architectural sense. We don't distribute the tools. There's nothing to install with either of us. We're both fully through browser or mobile, in our case, mobile apps. The data isn't generally getting copied all over the place. There are times where you need the file to come out, but it's not the primary way of communicating. And this architectural advantage, this system architecture, gives a lot of benefit that you realize now and that we'll realize more in the future. We don't have to write install programs. We don't have to get customers worried about which version they're on. It's impossible for two different Fictiv users to be on different versions of Fictiv, right? So all using the same cloud instance. Same with us.
It's funny, after you move off, you even forget that could even be a case that when someone sends you a 2018 version of CAD provider X and you can't open it up because you're running 2015, that's the way of the old. So I really want to make sure that we get to spend some time on some of the questions here, because I think that there's some good ones already coming in. So John, maybe I'll read this first one for you here. So it says, I just got the following email from our manufacturer. How do I tell the boss that I think Michael is lying? I love this. So I'll read the question. Paul, I'm having trouble seeing the drawing via Onshape. Please send PDFs of all drawings or install to the Dropbox account. The Onshape account only shows these tools. I think this really speaks to some of the challenges maybe of adoption or new technology.
So let me read that. Yeah, right. So I just got the following email from our manufacturer. How did I tell? Yeah, I see. So I'm trying to understand if this is a complaint. I see. So he's either complaining about us, about Onshape, or saying that he's doubting that this user is really unable to see it.
Yeah. I think that this speaks to the mismatch of communication we've talked about. Is Onshape perfect right now? Who knows? Is Fictiv perfect? You know, that these are the types of friction between manufacturer and supplier, Paul, that I think we're really working on trying to address.
Oh yeah, okay. He says, no, hardcore Onshape fan. But you just see, I'm trying to always be looking for ways to improve. Thank you there to that user. But yeah, exactly. I think what you're saying is you're talking about the quote manufacturer here isn't able to hide behind the I didn't get the file, or there's so much transparency and so much knowledge that they have the information in their hands that it changes the dynamic of communication. It's a little bit like they can't use the dog ate the homework or whatever. There's
accountability.
There's more accountability, and people, and also it speaks to the friction. We'll have the costing together next week. Email me on this email so we can sort it out.
For us as a manufacturer, costing next week is, I want parts in hand this week. I don't want to talk about pricing just to get there. And I think we really need to modernize that.
By the way, that user, I recognize your name, and I knew you're a fan of Onshape. Thank you. And but it's a really interesting story. I'm glad you brought it up. Great topic there about vendor. If you haven't seen our enterprise edition now, lets you get reports by project and maps. We have customers that want to see maps of activity. Yeah. And that's not something every user wants. Yeah. So, we're always trying to decide what goes in what edition of the product, but with this global map of activity. So you can see if you sent your model out to a consultant, or maybe you have a contractor who's doing some design work, but it's not even taken into manufacturing yet. And that partner is based in Florida, and you see the model being opened in Vietnam. You're gonna say, what's going on? Hey, wait, what's going on? Or if they say to you, I've been working at it really hard all week, and you open the model, you can see every edit that's been made. You see no edits. You're like, hey, what's going on? And it's really comforting. I know I see this in the models I work on, obviously not to build commercial products, but around the office here, where I can see other people coming into the model sometimes while I am, and I know what they're doing. I'm like, that's cool. I see what they did. Yeah. It's just peaceful. So
awesome. Another good one here. By moving to cloud collaboration for manufacturing, ensuring the security of proprietary part data is crucial to your success. How do you address security concerns for your customers? I'll take the first one from a Fictiv standpoint, and I'll let John do it from a system and CAD. 100% that security is one of the most important pillars for us. So we look at the traditional RFQ process today, where you might send a CAD file out to 5 different suppliers. Only one supplier is ever awarded that. And even if you have NDAs with all of them, there's still 4 suppliers that have access to your CAD that you've never seen before. And let's say you work at a big company like a Google or an Apple. They actually know who it's for, new product launch, very proprietary. So for us, only the supplier that ever gets your file or that's going to produce it ever has access to your file. And additionally, we actually anonymize all of your data, so they don't know who it's coming from. We do something called scattering. So if you order 10 different parts, you sometimes will go 3, 3, 3, and 1 to make those parts. So no single supplier actually has your full bill of materials.
Oh, I didn't know you did that. That's really cool.
And so that's one of the benefits of running a distributed system, that we can manage this whole thing all together. And so security is one of the things that I think it's about just better and better every single day. But we think that we're starting to chip away at it from a manufacturing perspective. I don't know how you guys think about it from a cloud standpoint.
Well, very similarly. I mean, for starters, you have to look at people's current process, which is just, honestly, I hate to say it, just really typically very insecure. We typically find, if you look at the old world, which is what many companies are using, data's in files. The files are all over the place. Remember the arrows diagram with the gridlock. And like you say, you're sending it to vendors, and you have no choice. In those companies you mentioned, I don't know if they're clients of yours, but if they're using old tools, they have to be sending files around. There's just no real reasonable way to do it. And you have employees with laptops walking out of the building every night with perfect digital copies of the most important assets. Even if the employees are honorable, the attack surface of their computer, today you only have to read in the news. There's more stories than you can count about everything from spear phishing to ads containing payloads. Man-in-the-middle attacks with Wi-Fi from $79 devices. It's so easy to break the desktop. The easiest assumption for you with desktop computers, very hard to secure. So the first thing is we're much more secure by design because there aren't copies. There's no, if you took Dave's and my laptops here, we don't have any data on them. We don't have design files. It's not here. So we eliminate the most vulnerable part of security by design, by architecture, like I showed in the architecture diagram. That's the first thing. The second thing is the security measures that we take, and I'm less familiar with yours, but I assume we take extensive cloud security measures that honestly almost no customer company could take on their own. Now certainly there are some, but very, very, very few customers can take the security measures that we do in cloud security, never mind that Amazon does. We run an Amazon infrastructure, armed guards, at very, very high, and then everything's encrypted in transit and in rest at banking military grade encryption levels. And so what it means is we can't stop people from, say, taking a photograph of the screen, or scraping the screen. You could write down, but
your data is secure.
But your data is secure. It never gets sent around, and so we think security is very big. And another way we address security is through auditing. Like again, I'm not as familiar with this part of your system.
We do this exact same thing.
We do the same thing. So we have an audit trail. A file has no audit trail.
No. An email has very limited audit trail.
An email tells you when you sent it to someone. You have no way of knowing.
When they read it, did they forward it? Did they download it?
So with the cloud architecture, we can audit everything. We know who was shared and when they were shared, when they were unshared, what activity they did. These audit capabilities are very, very useful. And then you say, how do you address security concerns for customers? Through these kinds of discussions. And then we have more formal security documents, and we go through, we have responses to security reviews and everything. And we actually like those things because we do quite well. So that's
cool.
That's a good answer there.
Let's grab the next one. I think that there's a couple folks that have all asked this. Do we see a more formal partnership between Fictiv and Onshape for the instant quoting system? I think that there is a beautiful world together. We're sitting here, you can take that handshake. But part of it is we think that we really speak the same language here, and we want to talk about how do you have this single source of truth? How do you enable collaborative CAD to meet virtual manufacturing? And I think that's a world that John and I share a very strong vision for, and something that we're excited to actually build together.
We have ideas on how we can integrate more, and obviously we'd love to bring more of the Fictiv experience right in the Onshape window. Why have to leave systems? We just haven't done that yet. The other thing we'd like to do is maybe some of Fictiv users would like to have Onshape in your window, and say, hey, I have this part. I'm going to suggest a couple mods to your part that will make it easier or cheaper to manufacture. I'll branch it in Onshape. I'll make the edits, and so
the real-time pricing, because where we focus a lot of our time is on going from digital to physical. So it's this idea of, I want to give you real-time pricing information on injection molding, machining, additive, sheet metal, all these different processes, urethane casting. And so as you change a fillet, as you remove an undercut so that setup gets removed, how does that change the price of the part? And it's something we think a lot about, in the same way that it's not just price, but it's also manufacturability. We want to remove that stat of how do you actually ensure that a designer and a manufacturer are speaking the same language of what is actually producible. And we don't think about removing the humans from this. We think about giving them aids. You want to give design tools that aids a manufacturer getting better.
One of the questions I'm sure we both get asked is, oh, does this mean I don't have to be as good an engineer? And the answer is you have to be better. With our tools, I mean, sorry everyone, I mean, or maybe congratulations everyone. Our tools, it's like, I like to think of our tools as giving you like a higher performance car. You have to be a better driver, not a worse one in some ways. And,
I think that what it enables though is it gives you superpowers. It's these superpowers that you never had before, because it allows you to say, hey, rather than having to send an email and someone asks this question, waiting a week to get pricing information back, what if you have this at your fingertips?
Yeah, actually, you know what? I mean, it would be so cool if we could give our Onshape users a way to say, okay, while I'm building this part, I want to have a little automated Fictiv running, or occasionally check in, and just have that happening. There's so much we have to do, and I know Onshape users know. That's the other thing you get with us is we release every few weeks. I don't know what your release cycle is like.
Daily, actually.
Okay. We're so like for us, we have such those Onshape users out there now. They wait patiently. We have so many things we want to add and do with our system, but this would be a great one. So
we'll add that to our superpower list.
I really want to do it. And then next here, I see a question.
Go
I'm a mechanical engineer. Currently working with an MP, manufacturing partner that just got a few Onshape licenses. Cool. Intent of streamlining RFQs and collaboration.
Nice.
We need to establish the proper workflow. Any suggestions using branches to establish prototype revs, etc. So there's the workflow question is a big one with our tools, and maybe with yours too, because
all the time.
Because you have to work in new ways if you really want to take advantage of them. And so I think it's outside the scope of what I can answer here, but branches to establish prototype revs, that's one way to do it. Another is to use, I don't know if you're using our release management.
We can send a couple of links maybe to.
I'm going to ask Kim here, who's been supporting us here in the room, if she can find, we may even have a good blog post or webinar that would be appropriate. And if not, what I'll ask you to do is let's make sure we follow up with this user outside of here, maybe opening a ticket for some help. And we can get back to you again offline. But you're asking the right question: is what's the right workflow, and how would considering all the tools we have, versioning, branching, merging, release management, these Onshape tools that we have. Linked documents can sometimes be an interesting way to accomplish this. And we have a couple of new things coming that will affect these workflows. Do
we get a sneak preview?
Well, they're things that have been requested from users to help them manage this in areas of more fine-grained control over sharing that could be used in these situations and things like that. And so we got some cool things coming always. But it's a great question, and highlights another thing, which is ask us about reach out. There's the feedback tool in Onshape. Check in with us if you're having a question, but great question.
I think there's a good one, which I'll take the next is, for myself, when will you be expanding the type of manufacturing that are available? Right now I need some carbon fiber pieces made, but I have no luck finding a shop to do it. So Paul, you're spot on here that we focus primarily on injection molding, CNC additives, so 3D printing, sheet metal, and urethane casting. So those are our 5 core. And we're adding new processes every day, and even materials. So we think about services plus capabilities. So service would be like sheet metal or layups, and then capabilities would be carbon fiber. We don't offer it ourselves, but Paul, if you follow up with myself and the team, there's a couple shops we know in California that I'll just put you directly in touch with and can help you out there. You can work directly with them. But composites are a really tricky one. But love it.
Boy, I can't get out of my mind this idea of putting all your good stuff right in our window. That's gonna be stuck in my head.
We're
especially as you add all these new other processes that would cover so many more parts. And actually, I'll go right to this other question I see here: is where do you see engineers pushing the envelope the most? What things are they doing that stretch your current capabilities? And in our Onshape user base, I think we see people stretching us in a lot of different axes. One for us is always size and complexity of a design.
Like the number of parts or just the number of features?
Larger and larger assemblies, yeah, that's for sure.
Assemblies.
And larger and larger numbers of features. I think on geometry, we're never done with core geometry, with part modeling. As you know, we're really proud of where we are, and we have a really great set. But we see people always, there's different users pushing the envelope, even with part modeling, geometric shapes, or easier ways to make some shapes. We have some nice things coming there too, where, as you know, we're always adding cool little things that help you get things done faster there. So part modeling, assembly scope, drawings is an area that we're never done with. And I was talking to you, we were talking offline about, and you're out there with your drawing requests. So that's an area of people pushing the envelope. Another area is with our release management and approval workflows. We have people asking us for improvements there that are pushing that. With deployment in large user groups, that's another area we've taken a huge step forward there with our Enterprise Edition to be able to say, hey, I want to roll Onshape out to not 1, 2, or 5 users, but to hundreds of users, 1,000 users. We just had a user organization onboard 1,200 users in an afternoon using our Enterprise Edition. Well, all went really smoothly. The tools are there. And so we've added in Enterprise tools for roles-based access control, for projects and permission sets and things like that make that. That's another area people push us on. So really, so many dimensions of our system we're getting. And the API is another area. Integration with other systems, and of course partner applications. What we're talking about here. Hey, how come we don't have Fictiv right in the window? How come we don't have Onshape in the Fictiv window? That's another. So really,
we get
every front.
We get pushed in the same way that engineers are always pushing us to produce parts which we never thought were capable beforehand, pushing us to new services and technologies that, one of the reasons is we actually opened our office in China just in January of this year. And one of the major reasons was from our customers pushing us. They were saying, we want to do higher and higher volumes with you. We don't want to trade off to another supplier. We love this experience of, I request a quote, I get it, I put a PO in, and I just get my parts tomorrow. And they're saying, why can't we do that for 10,000 pieces? Why can't I do that for 100,000 pieces where it's kitted? And so really it was our customers that pushed us to open China. And so when we see that pushes injection molding, it pushes sheet metal, and even within those, to 5-axis, to just hitting a scale of manufacturing, we didn't think we'd be at here today. So I think that a lot of what you're talking about is, it is the folks, everyone that's listening to this webinar, that pushes us to actually change this industry. That we want to know, what are the services you're looking for? What are the features you need to truly disrupt manufacturing? That even as I'm saying this, someone was asking Brandon here that he recently submitted a quote to Fictiv and got a no quote. Was told that we're in the process of onboarding a new MP, that's a manufacturing partner, in a vetting process. That's our everyday. One of the beauties of being a virtual contract manufacturers, we don't own any machines. So when we want a new process, it's about how do you qualify them for the quality that they need and bring them on board. And Brandon, to your point, it's a pretty long process. It can take anywhere from a week to a couple weeks to onboard a new supplier, and it goes through a whole quality checklist. We actually do an on-site audit of as well. We do test parts, and even after they're onboarded, they go through a whole internal tiering system where, if you're working in a large enterprise, you're not going to use an entry-level tier that will actually use non-critical parts that are longer lead time, maybe a 10-day lead time, to help prove out the supplier. And we have all this internal metrics.
Like data. Uber with VIP and black car,
yes,
so
but
to speak.
The biggest difference is that with Uber, you have the rider that is saying like 1 star, 5 star. But how good is that rider really rating the quality of a ride? When we look at it, that if I want to make this cup, well, what is quality for this cup? Is it the transparency? Is it the surface finish? Is it the repeatability of the 50 of these? Or is it the accuracy of the ID of this mug, the internal diameter? this is what we think one of our core specialties is supplier auditing and all the data management that goes around bringing on new technology.
Yeah, that's actually I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's a great value add, that you're not just referring, you're vetting.
Yeah.
I actually wish Uber would follow your lead and do that more, because of some of my experiences.
Yeah.
But I want to jump in with my own question,
Please.
which is, you're in a catbird seat to see firsthand an enormous number of manufacturing partners, because as Dave said, Fictiv doesn't make parts, they manage that network.
Yeah.
And what I really have two questions. One is, and this one's a little hard, is what you're doing, good for any particular country, whether it's America or China?
Yeah.
Is it better for, or Europe or whatever, is it better for some countries than others, or do you feel it's neutral? That's my first question.
Okay.
The second one.
Cool. So to answer the first one, the amount of questions I get around tariff and trade wars today is skyrocketed.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of political climate, which really drives to the heart of this. And at the core, what I think about is two things. One, how do you apply agility to supply chain? Like, that's really the key. But the major thing is, you have to look at the time scales of the question you're talking about. When I'm setting up a supply chain to make my parts, I am forecasting years, sometimes decades out, right? Harley-Davidson's been in the news recently, and they're talking about why they need to offshore to meet demand in 2027. That's almost 10 years from now.
Wow.
And so that's because of the different trade wars that are going on between Europe and the US. But on the flip side, if you look at how policies are made, they're made at the rate of quarters or maybe months, right? Maybe it's a quick tweet from our current president. So they're much faster. So the question becomes, how do you build agility into these systems? Because supply chains don't change on a dime. They don't just monitor. So to your question of what does this do? Is it better for one country versus the other? We think about, through technology, we can apply agility to contract manufacturing, and you drive to hyper-local economies. Because if you're here in Boston and you make a part, we will optimize routing a part to be made that's closest to you for that. That's one of the pillars of scheduling that we have. But maybe you're at a higher volume, cost is really important. It's probably going to go overseas where it's a lower labor cost on this. And it's a very dynamic system for how we think about this scheduling to all of this different supply base. If that answers your question.
Well, it sounds like, in a sense, I think what you're saying is that this can be good for everyone who has value to add, in a sense, whether you're local or global.
Yeah.
And so that's fine. And so the other question I had is, what can you tell me as someone who is in the trenches every day with people who make parts and products worldwide?
Yeah.
Tell me something that's going on that I wouldn't know about from where I sit, or our audience wouldn't know, that you're on the front lines in that. What's a trend or something happening?
Sorry, we're gonna plug in here.
Bring me a news report that I wouldn't know about from.
I think one of the interesting things that we see happening is this merging of many industries to bring new technologies to spaces they've never seen. So I'll give you a couple examples that I love what's going on in the medical robotics space right now. I love how we're applying hardcore technology from a manufacturing space to solve really challenging medical problems. And we do that through structural robotics that we've built, in other sectors, whether it's military or it's an automation sector or even in manufacturing floors. We see the same thing happening in autonomous vehicles with sensing technology that we look at. There's a company called Light that just raised 180 million that's building a new type of LiDAR system for doing autonomous vehicles. And when you look at the merging of manufacturing plus technology to build these unique solutions on the frontier of innovation, it's just so incredible, because we, as a manufacturer, we work with all these industries, and so we get to see what consumer electronics is doing, what automotive is doing, how industrial IoT is driving medical robotics. It's really quite awesome to see.
Do you have any tips? And this will be my last question.
Okay, cool.
I have so many. Do you have any tips for people who people are still, even the most diehard Fictiv customer is not going to buy everything through Fictiv.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips, again, as someone who's immersed in the business, I'm picking your brain for hopefully their benefit. What are the tips that an average Onshape user who's doing everything they can with Fictiv, but are still buying things elsewhere?
Yes.
What are the tips for them to do better with their vendors?
I think the biggest things that folks don't normally think about is forecasting. So I think that so many times you're in a DVT, design, validation, testing, EVT stage, and you're so focused on getting this product to fit together, you're not looking at what's the cost of this thing. If I make 1, 10, 10,000 of these, what does that look like? What's my budget for early stage development versus mass production? That what we see is folks will try to de-risk a decision in EVT, but they're not willing to maybe spend an extra $50 to prove or disprove that thing. And because there's short versus long-term thinking. And then they get to mass production and they built this incredibly complex device and they're like, we got to drive the cost down. And it's like, well, you have a 287 unique part mechanical bomb. I don't care how much optimization we do, we're not getting that thing to $20. And you can look at, kind of the horror stories of Juicero, that made this like juicing machine. You can look at, there's Lilly, it was a drone company. You can look at, all these different hardware startups that raise tens, hundreds of millions that never get the market that, we just did a teardown on the coolest cooler. I don't know if you've seen this thing, but it's a cooler that has a blender and a speaker and a board, all these different features in it. They did 13 million in Kickstarter, fabulous product, never got to market.
I think we saw that in Kickstarter.
Yeah, it just was too complex, and so I think just breaking it down a little bit, but maybe.
Okay, let's go back to these audience questions, because I can ask you all day here. So.
I have one on metrology, which maybe I'll ask. Does Fictiv do metrology? Yeah, the answer is yes. We can do both hand metrology as well. I just saw a comment about the coolest cooler. A few people got them, but hand metrology, yes, we do it. We also do CMM and OMM. Obviously, hand metrology is faster. For folks that don't know, metrology is the study of measurements or validation. And that's really important there.
Yeah, and that's another area that we have more work to do over the years ahead.
Much.
Because as customers want to assign key information in Onshape, they'll want it to be part of that measurement and inspection, right?
Yeah.
And so we got a lot of work to do. I'll take here's a short one about EEs. How can non-CAD users, like for instance EEs, collaborate on your platforms?
Yeah.
And I like to think that the answer is super easily in both our platforms, because one of the things we're doing is we're bringing more people into these systems than could be part of the old days. And both Onshape and Fictiv mean that managers, in our case, you mentioned EEs, even marketing types, purchasing people, they couldn't, would never be able to access, old CAD or some email thread with attachments, of CAD files or something. That's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
It's super easy.
Yeah, I think that collaboration is, you can't think about, we think about the single user experience. We want a multiplayer experience. And so having the ability for a doubly to jump in quickly, make a question about where the board layout is, where through holes need to be, it's so important to actually design those next products. So just spot on.
And be more a part of it. And there's typically more people involved. And I'll also add that for you Onshape users out there, we're well aware that there's a growing populations of Onshape users that are not heavy-duty CAD users, where we'll have a CAD user design center. They've got a lot of people really just looking at data, just viewing. We're going to try and make that part of the experience even better and better. That's another front people are pushing us on. So,
I'll take this one here. What is Fictiv's competitive advantage over other manufacturing platforms that have capabilities in-house? If hyper-local manufacturing is the future, why not buy your own equipment? This is a great question, and one that we get a lot. And it really comes down to one thing: it's capacity. That if you own machines, let's say I'm a Protolabs, they are connected, they give you a web interface, but they own all the machines there. If you're going to own machines, you're going to operate your network, at probably, or those machines at probably an 80 or 90% utilization. I got to recover the cost of those machines. If you take the flip side for us, we don't own any machines, and we operate our network at around 30%. And so we can handle these spikes much easier. That if you come to me and you need 500 parts, all you need, no problem, we handle it. But if we owned machines, the ability to handle these spikes is very similar to in the software world of, we used to have on-prem server racks, and you would hit spikes of daily usage, and that means you just buy more and more server racks. And if you look at the auto scaling that AWS provides today, it really is the wave of the future. And so we think about how do you virtualize these instances of machine while controlling quality, has to be quality, but giving it at a larger scale, which we think is just awesome.
Here's another question. With Onshape and Fictiv, will drawings become obsolete? Well, I think the answer is no. You know, like I'd love to say now, will it evolve to be what we might call MBD, or
model-based definition?
Yeah, model-based definition. In that sense, that could happen.
Yeah.
But there's always going to need to be more annotation to the model about the manufacturing, the intent and the validation. As long as its products have surface finishes and tolerances, which they're going to have for a long time, then we're going to need that.
I am definitely with this user. As a mechanical engineer myself, I hate drawings. Like, it's just like, you finished everything and now you got to go build this whole GD&T. I think that the benefits of drawings is we built a pretty good language to describe intent, which is GD&T, but it's so cumbersome to actually build them. And so what John's talking a lot about is we need to better integrate the intent, which is MBD is one framework for that, into the 3D experience. That long should be the days that we need to take 3D, cut it to 2D, and put all this obscure language that you need a whole nother degree even to do. But I don't think it'll become obsolete because you'll always have this challenge of going from digital and describing what are all the unique ways to actually make this into a physical part. Surface finish, tolerance issues, datums, reference planes. This stuff I don't think will ever leave manufacturing.
Totally agree. So, and in fact, they may want more of it in our world, because they'll be able, because the more confidence you have, they'll go the extra mile. I'm going to read one here. This is more a comment, but I'll pass it along. This is a user, again, Onshape user. I've had success using Onshape as a file share with manufacturers, uploading PDFs, step CSVs, along with native parts imported from my working CAD documents. This seems to be an easier way to get manufacturers to try new technology and share a large amount of data. So this is a really great point, which is this user is saying, it's what I was talking about earlier about our Onshape compound documents, where it's not just Onshape parts or assemblies you can put in PDFs. It looks like he's putting in step files, CSVs, comma separated variable, basically simple tables of numeric data. Could be representing, hard to know what it's representing, a bomb or something else. You can upload that, and even native parts from other CAD systems, because again, just like I said about you, not very few customers are going to make everything.
Totally.
Very few customers have their whole world being Onshape. They've got data from other CAD systems. They're using them in-house. They're getting it from customers.
Data interoperability is so key.
So this user makes a great point, which it's not an all or nothing black or white thing. You're able to work great with Onshape with parts from other CAD systems, even sometimes just using an Onshape document as a collection of files where you may not even be doing any geometric modeling. And especially now with release management, we're seeing more use cases like that. So great point out there. Thank you. And not exactly a question, but a great comment. Here's another question, which is, does integrated DFM and Onshape here refer to support multiple manufacturing processes, say accountable for injection molding, additive, sheet metal machining, etc.? And my answer, I hope yours too, David, if we ever do the integration, it darn well will support multiple processes.
100%. That, on Fictiv today, when you go to our site and you upload files, we do give you DFM on all those processes. And so we really believe, John and I, where we've been talking earlier this afternoon, is how do we get to a world where these visions are really combined to realize that true potential of what this user's asking.
I think
for.
it looks like time for maybe one more question
Yeah,
here.
last one.
Can I nominate this last one here from an
Take it.
old friend of mine, actually? Thank you. What is your view on when generative design and additive will leave traditional CNC behind?
Yeah, for sure. I think that generative is such a unique way of building parts which are not even imaginable today by our minds, and leveraging AI and all this computational geometry to build it. I'm more of a traditionalist, and I don't actually believe you'll ever leave subtractive behind. There's always going to be a Michelangelo that wants to, carve something out of marble, and there will be, someone that wants to grow this thing from the bottom up, if you will. And so I think what generative and additive manufacturing will do will open up a whole new realm of possibilities for what parts can be produced. I was just looking at one with these internal cooling channels in a robotic structure, and that could only ever be done in additive, and it's fascinating what it enables. So
yeah, I think I agree. I mean, we're super excited about generative and additive, and we have, for those of you who don't know, we support mesh models in Onshape's Part Studio. That's something that users use in many different use cases. So you can you can send out parts from Onshape, bring them back in from our partners, people like Frustrum and Topology, Paramatters. We have a number of great partners in that area. And generative and topology optimization are not just strictly for additive, and vice versa. So like I know that I think it's Frustrum will optimize a shape, which isn't quite the same as pure generative, for CNC machining. Send it over and do milling. And I've had users tell me that's so exciting. So these are tools that will become, I think it's safe to say that we're going to see more of it tomorrow than we saw yesterday.
100%.
But it's not like every part in the world. Lastly, every problem in the world is not optimizing strength or cooling flow.
Nope.
There's a lot of design is a very varied thing, and so a lot going on. And we'll try to keep responding to the whole spectrum. I just want to say thank you again to Dave and Fictiv for the great system you brought out there, helping a lot of our customers. It's been a real pleasure to get know you better. Great questions from our audience. Thank you so much. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to answer every one of them. And
thank you, John, for hosting us here, and for everyone for listening today. The 2018 State of Hardware Report hopefully was really interesting for everyone to read. There's a PDF here in the handouts, and take a look. And please be a participant next year so we can make it even better.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you all.
Hey, thanks everyone. Cheers.
Bye.